Hi, my name is Russinovich. I'm CTO, Deputy CISO, and Technical Fellow in Microsoft Azure, and I'm also the co-creator of Sysinternals tools and continuing maintainer of Sysinternals tools. So the Sysinternals tools goes back 30 years, and it started with a few little utilities like NTFS-DOS, FileMon, Regmon, and then continued to grow from there to now being over 70 tools. But one of my favorite tools, and it's a tool that I use literally every single day, is called ZoomIt. ZoomIt is a tool that I created out of necessity. I would come to Microsoft's campus and present Windows internals classes with my co-author on the Windows NT internals books, David Solomon. And when I was doing those presentations, I'd run Sysinternals tools and other systems utilities to highlight some of the concepts we'd be teaching as we'd go through various parts of Windows. I'd want to zoom in so the audience in a large room could see. And I'd also want to annotate, draw lines and arrows and boxes around what I was wanting them to focus on. We'd come across a tool that was that was shipped with Toshiba laptops that David used for this, and I started using it. And I found it incredibly clunky. It had an awkward keystroke combination to launch it. It was limited in the kinds of drawings that it could do, and generally just a little painful to use. And I thought, I can actually create something better. So one weekend, I cranked out the first version of ZoomIt, which when it started was a simple screen annotation zooming tool. It would create a snapshot of the screen, let you zoom in on a certain area, and then with a keystroke, you could switch into drawing mode and then draw lines, arrows, boxes, and circles around things, and even change the colors of them if you wanted to do different kinds of highlights. Dave and I immediately started using it in our classes and found it incredibly useful. And then Dave came and said, hey, let's add a support for a break timer, because when we go on breaks, it'd be nice to have a countdown. I've been using this separate app, but it doesn't have what I want in it. So I added the countdown feature. And over the last 20 plus years since I created that first version, ZoomIt has continued to accrue lots and lots of cool features. Now, ZoomIt includes things like video capture, so you can record the screen and the audio from the system sounds as well as the mic and do demo captures like that. And recently, I added even things like being able to insert the webcam view into the recorded image, and then to take the recorded image and do an edit of that recorded capture, so you could take out the ends and concatenate the beginning with a different clip. So ZoomIt has become quite the Swiss Army knife for all-in-one demo, presentation, and recording tool. Now, Sysinternals tools has traditionally been Windows only, and a few years ago we started to create versions of the tools for Linux. But one of the requests that I've gotten a lot over the last few years, including from people at Microsoft, is, hey, can you make a version of ZoomIt for macOS? Because we're walking around with Mac laptops. We're wanting to show things like GitHub Copilot and VS Code on the Mac. We'd love to be able to zoom in and draw, and there's really no good built-in capability, and even the third-party tools don't have the kind of fluidity and feature set that ZoomIt has. I thought this was an interesting ask that I'd never have time to get around to. But a few weeks ago, I was sitting there on a Saturday and thinking, you know what, it'd be kind of fun to do ZoomIt for Mac. And so I got a Mac, and then the next Saturday morning, I set up the Mac and got it added to Microsoft's corporate environment. That took an hour or so, and then I said, let's start creating ZoomIt for Mac. I expected this exercise to be something that I'd work on over a few weekends in the summer, maybe over a couple months, and then have a version of ZoomIt for Mac, maybe to be missing some features or that wouldn't be supported in the way that I needed on Mac. But I thought I'd give it a try with AI to help me so that I wouldn't have to do all the work. Prior to AI, I would have never even considered, and I never considered doing this, because I would have had to learn so much about Mac. The Mac audio stack, the Mac video stack, the Mac screen stack, the Mac drawing APIs. It just would have been a very tedious process. So like I said, I started Saturday morning with prompting, and I thought, let me prompt it by letting it look at the Windows version. And I'm not going to have it swallow the whole thing in one chunk and just say, hey, go re-implement this for Mac. It'd be an interesting exercise to go back and do that. But instead, I started incrementally building up the Mac version so that I could control what was happening and make sure that it worked the way that I wanted. And I started with, hey, just create a simple screen, zoom, and drawing, going back to the first features of that first ZoomIt back from the early 2000s. And it finished that in about a half an hour over the course of roughly a dozen prompts. And then I thought, let's continue. This was much faster and easier than I thought. And I kept over the next 2 days prompting it to add additional features and functionality and tweak the UX and deal with things like the permissions issues that come up on Mac for being able to grab screenshots and keystrokes. And by Sunday night, I'd created a basic high fidelity clone of ZoomIt on Mac with everything that I talked about. Break timers, demo typing, panorama screenshots, video recording, video editing, the whole thing. Not to say that it wasn't it didn't have a few bugs, but it was 90+% of the way there. I was flabbergasted. This is really highlights just the kind of new era we're in of agentic coding, where in this case, it maybe cheated a little because it could look at the Windows code to understand what to do, but you have to think about it at the same time. That really guided it on the structure and features, but it still had to map all of the Windows constructs to Mac. It had to understand the Mac audio stack, the Mac video stack, all the things that I mentioned earlier that I would have had to learn myself. I didn't have to learn any of it, and it did the whole thing. So now there's Sysinternals, a ZoomIt for Mac, and you can see here on the front page of the Sysinternal site that it was just released a few days ago, or a few weeks ago here on July 24th, open source, so you can go look at the source code to it. And here it is, ZoomIt for Mac, download ZoomIt for Mac on GitHub. So here you go. There's ZoomIt for Mac. And I can demonstrate here ZoomIt for Mac. Again, like I said, zooming, drawing, typing, color changing. So if I type hello, ZoomIt here. So that's a look at the ZoomIt functionality. And if I switch over to VS Code here, you can see where I'm actually editing the code myself here locally. Here we got ZoomIt in the menu bar, so you can have easy access to all of the settings. And this is kind of a tour of all of its features. General, zoom, live zoom, so you can zoom in on the live screen. The draw commands and ability to change color and draw shapes, like I mentioned. Typing, so you can change the font. Demo type, and this I thought actually in the first version that I made, nobody uses demo type. This is a feature Scott Hanselman asked me to implement a few years ago. I implemented it for him, and then he doesn't use it. So I didn't include that in the first version, but it turns out that there are people out there that use demo type. So I added demo type. Here's the break timer that I mentioned. Snip. So this is so much more convenient than on Windows, the snippet built-in snipping tool. And on Mac, I couldn't believe just how cumbersome it is to get a screenshot. But on Mac with ZoomIt, you can get a screenshot just by typing Control-6, grabbing your region, and now it's in the Mac clipboard. And you can paste it right in to something like VS Code with their equivalent of Control-V, and then I've got the pasted image here. So much more convenient than the gestures that are built into the Mac. Coming back here, there's the record that I mentioned with all the options for webcam overlay, positioning of that webcam overlay. And finally, here's the feature that I'm going to demonstrate for you here today, which is brand new, showing up in the Windows version of ZoomIt in the next week or two, and also coming up in the Mac release in the next week or two. It's something that I wished I'd thought of creating many years ago, but it's been on my list and I just thought it'd be very hard or maybe even impossible. Here's the scenario. I'm presenting from this laptop with an extended monitor where people can see the PowerPoint presentation that I'm delivering. I want to have on my local laptop, on my local display, the various demos that I want to set up. And then I would like to without exiting PowerPoint presenter mode, where I can see the next slides, is to switch and show a demo, switch and show a window on this local display so I can interact with it directly, but the audience is able to see it on the remote display instead of the PowerPoint window. Because without that, the only options I have are not to extend the display, and then everybody can see everything I'm doing, and that becomes distracting. I also can't see PowerPoint view, or I go into presenter view and then have to switch back to mirror desktop, and then when I'm ready to continue, switch back to extend, and then go back into PowerPoint. All extremely clunky. So Demo Mirror is intended to work around that. With Demo Mirror, what I can do is show people a presentation. Let me pop open a presentation, and this happens to be the presentation that Scott and I delivered at Build. And then I can present it. And what I'm seeing on my local monitor is presenter view. What you see are the presentation slides. And what I would love to be able to do now is show you a part of VS Code where I can show you exactly how I created Demo Mirror for the Mac by mirroring just that slice of VS Code onto the remote monitor. What I'm going to do is do Control-Shift-9 and just select the chat panel, which I'm going to walk through with you, to mirror. And so here we have just the chat panel. I didn't have to exit PowerPoint presenter mode. And you can see the prompts that I entered literally this morning to get demo mirroring working on the Mac. You can see here, and I'm going to zoom in so you can see a little more easily. Look at the PowerToys repo, up one directory, and see if ZoomIt with the new demo mirror feature is the main branch or one you can find. So it went and found demo mirror for Windows, and then I said this: I want you to add that feature exactly it works with the same config options panel to this project. Create the demo mirror branch for it. And it went and chugged along, and then it was done. And it said, oh, I need an external monitor for you to test on. I connected to an external monitor and was able to show the whole thing working end to end. And that's basically it for getting Demo Mirror working. So again, I wish I'd created this thing a long, long time ago, but now it's here. And now whenever I'm doing a presentation from my laptop, I'm able to do Demo Mirror of the whole screen, like I'm doing here, or part of the screen without ever exiting PowerPoint. So I hope if you're a longtime ZoomIt user that you've learned a little bit more about it and its capabilities. And if you're new to ZoomIt, I encourage you to check it out, whether you're a Windows user or a Mac user, and up-level your demoing and recording skills. Thanks very much.